Well, the sun's setting here in the west and the sun has set for the Australia-Indian Test Series. Well done to India. What a wonderful performance. But all the talk is about the Australian batting lineup. Now, if you look at the 18 batters that were used between India and Australia in this series, in the top 7, only one Australian fits in amongst the Indians. He moves into 9, and that was Usman Khawaja, just in front of Murali Vijay for the highest first-class averages before this series started. So Australia were already on a hiding to nothing, apparently, from the stats. But I've been diving in to the decades, the past 7 decades of Australian cricket. Now let's go back to the 50s. I really like that particular period. I didn't get to see much of it because of my age, but in the 50s, 10 players averaged over 50. 3 of them averaged 60 or more. There were 24 players in all that averaged 40 or more. They won 69% of their series. Sorry, they drew or won 69% of their series. The 60s, there were 12 batsmen that averaged over 50. 1 batsman averaged more than 60. That was the great Bobby Simpson. 31 players averaged 40 or more. 87.5% of those series were either won or drawn. Now we go into the 70s. Only 6 players averaged over 50. Greg Chappell was the only player in that decade that averaged 60 or more. Only 16 players averaged 40 or more. 66% of those series were either won or drawn by Australia. Wasn't one of the best periods. In the 80s, again, only 6 players averaged over 50. 41 players averaged 40 or more. No one averaged in the 60s, and they only won 62% of their games. Now let's go into the 90s. The nervous 90s. Well, they weren't too nervous for Australia. 11 players averaged over 50, 3 averaged 60 or more, 30 players averaged 40 or more, and they won or drew 79% of the series played in that decade. Now we go to one of the better series or periods that Australia have ever been involved in, the early 2000s, 2000 to 2009. 10 players averaged 50 or more, 3 averaged 60 or more, 34 batsmen averaged 40 or more. 86% of those series played in that decade were either won or drawn. Congratulations to that period. Now we go into the last decade, the present decade. Only 4 players in first-class cricket or Sheffield Shield at home averaged 50 or more. The sad thing about that, 21 players averaged 40 or more. But the sad thing about that is 9 of those players aren't playing anymore. 2 are suspended for unforeseen circumstances, and 1 player has passed away who was going to be an absolute legend, Phil Hughes. And I've got to make special mention to him because he is a loss and a sore loss to Australia, but we all remember him as a great. Now, the bad thing about this period is Australia have only won or drawn 56% of the series won. Now, where's the problem? Should we be complaining about the players? No. I think we should be complaining about the system. We had the Futures League coming in at 2010 where they were trying to concentrate on the youth. Only 3 players above 23 were only allowed to play in that Futures competition per team. So the experienced players weren't hanging around the younger players, weren't being able to help develop the younger players, but also if you're doing well out grade cricket, there were only limited opportunities for you to play the next level in the Future League series to prove yourself for Shield cricket. That is a huge problem. And one of the players that have averaged 40 or more in Shield cricket over the last decade isn't playing Shield cricket anymore. He's only concentrating on the shorter form of the game. That is another big issue. And talking about the shorter form of the game, 61 days have been spent this year through the Big Bash. Also, we have 51 days for the IPL. So most of our players are concentrating on that T20 format. They're spending 4 months of the year in T20 cricket. How are we going to get them to play more longer form of the game so they can learn to do what Pujara does, spend time out the middle and just grind away and build an innings? Good luck to the future of Australian cricket.